In this video, we will discover 6 features of cults that they have in common with narcissists, so you can learn to recognize them and minimize the risk you get caught up in them, whether from cults or from narcissists. This has been inspired by a book I read recently by Dr. Stephen Hassan called Combating Cult Mind Control. I highly recommend you read this book. It's been illuminating. The first one is that narcissists and cults lie to you. They do that in order to get you interested in what they do through false pretexts. Remember that lying to you to get you interested is simply a form of manipulation. If they told you what they were up to in the first place, you wouldn't be interested. So the fact they have to lie tells you that something fishy is going on. This can be through fake causes, it can be through fake names, fake stories, their backstory, the family story, their professional life, and so on. And also, sometimes they just lie about their age. When it comes to cults, be it political cults or spiritual cults, it can also be lying about the organization. For example, I know a political cult that runs various different organizations, and it seems like these are completely independent organizations. But behind them, there is one small group of individuals who run all of the organizations, and they use the organizations to recruit more people into their movement, and each of these organizations is simply a false pretext to get people interested. Or another example is when you meet someone to start a relationship and it turns out they lie to you about their employer or they lie to you about their age. Why would they do this if they had nothing to hide? Why would they not just tell you things the way they are? It's simply a form of manipulation. Now, with some topics, we can understand why people might be reluctant to tell the entire truth at first, but then you have to see, are they forthcoming? Do they admit things rather quickly? Do they want to correct? Do they tend towards telling the truth? Or are they unapologetic about it? And remember, if someone is okay lying about something relatively important, well, they probably are okay lying about other things. So you can always wonder, what else are they lying about? This probably is not the only lie they are telling. And one of the reasons they lie brings us to point number 2, is that they hijack reciprocity. So they lie to get us interested. They usually are quite generous with things. They might be inviting us to events, inviting us to dinners, inviting us to spend time with them, in order so that we feel obligated to give them something back. Typically, they will ask for a commitment that can feel like a rather big commitment, such as going to another event, going to another conference that we wouldn't have done naturally, or inviting you for dinner. I remember the Maldivian con man was insisting I go to his place with his wife for dinner when we only just met, and to me it felt very strange, much too fast. I wasn't comfortable, and eventually I gave in because I felt rude when he was putting so much pressure, and I kept saying no. This leads us to the third point, which is they hijack shame and guilt. He tried guilt-tripping me because I kept saying no, and he'd say, it seems like you don't want to have dinner with us. And of course, the truth is I didn't want to have dinner with them. I didn't want to hang out with them. I barely knew them, and we didn't really get along. But I was feeling ashamed to just say so, and I wasn't feeling comfortable. This is something cults and narcissists do systematically. If you're feeling pressured, or if you're feeling that someone is guilt-tripping you or making you feel guilty, that is a sign that something toxic is happening. It might be a cult, it might be a narcissist, but regardless, it is something that is unhealthy. Remember that people who create embarrassment will use this as a pressure tactic, and using it as a pressure tactic is simply a way of getting what they want, but has got nothing to do with what you want or what might be good for you. And this leads us to the fourth point. They isolate us from friends and family. One of the ways of doing this is taking up a lot of our time, so we don't have time to socialize with friends and family. But also, if we end up going to events or demonstrations or dinners and we're feeling pressured to do it, we generally are a bit embarrassed to tell friends and family that we've been hanging out with someone just because they were so annoying that we didn't know how to say no. Or we might be embarrassed to tell people close to us that we started taking up some random political cause that we've got nothing to do with because it seems like the right thing to do. Especially because we probably can anticipate they might ask, what is going on with that? Like, how come you are interested in something like this all of a sudden? And that usually comes from a place of concern and a place of worry, and might just be the kind of thing that we actually need. One of the points of isolating us from friends and family obviously is to make us more vulnerable, because if we don't have our ecosystem around us, if we don't have our safety net, if we don't have the people who look after us, who have our back, it's much easier to lie to us. It's much easier to manipulate us, and it's much easier to try to replace the healthy environment with a completely unhealthy one. One of the keys is when people try to turn us against our loved ones, be it friends or family. This would be people making suggestions that maybe your sibling is jealous of you. Maybe your best friends are not really your best friends. Maybe they're using you. Maybe you deserve more time away from the family. Maybe all of these things. Remember that if we're getting isolated from friends and family, we are alone, we are more dependent, and it's much easier for them to exert control over us, also because we can't really use our friends and family as a sounding board anymore. That's exactly what cults, on the one hand, and narcissists want. As soon as there are other people surrounding us, and we can use them as trusted sounding boards, these people have less power over us, and what they want is to have all of the power over us. And of course, what happens when we lose contact with friends and family is we lose our true self. We have to then create a false self to fit in, be it with a cult or be it with a narcissist. Sometimes it's rooted in some parts of us, but generally we're losing contact with who we really are, because the person who we really are has links with the friends and the family. Assuming that the family is not too toxic, and assuming that most of our friends are not too toxic, but generally speaking, it's not the case unless we grew up in a cult. When we create a fake self, we lose touch with ourself, with our worldview, and we're significantly easier to manipulate. What cults and narcissists typically do is try to tell us that our worldview is naive, is stupid, that we've been lied to, maybe that we're part of some kind of problem, and if only we listen to them, then we might be a good person. This is incredibly effective because it's one way to put more distance between ourselves and our friends and family and our worldview, but especially to delegate power to these random people who claim that they have 100% of everything figured out. Note that there's a massive difference between someone who encourages you to think for yourself and someone who encourages you to do as they say and think as they say. A healthy approach would be when someone gives you tools to think for yourself so you can make up your own mind and challenge and agree to disagree and so on. But as soon as someone is mocking others for what they think, showing contempt, belittling them, talking down to them, they're in an unhealthy vertical dynamic where they're trying to impose their point of view on others. That's usually a bad sign. Which leads us to the sixth point, which is they create a fear of the outside. They create a fear of the people who disagree with them. Why is this the case? Because if they tell you that the people who disagree with them and who disagree with you are bad people, you will not listen to them. And if you don't listen to them, you won't listen to different ideas, which means that the toxic ideas that you are being encouraged to have won't go challenged. If you are in a cult, be it an organization or with a narcissist, and the ideas are unchallenged, you just go along with whatever happens. Why? Because if you don't do that, you're getting ejected. And that is absolutely terrifying. Remember also that when you're afraid of the outside, you're much less likely to leave and get help, because you won't trust the people who disagree, and you've probably been told that these people are bad people, dishonest people, and they don't have your best interest at heart, and you have to stay. This keeps you even more vulnerable and even more dependent. One of the ways that they create the fake self is through slogans and mantras and fears. It's a form of programming. This is exactly what is used with mind control, as the book says, and various forms of hypnosis. When someone tells you to repeat a slogan again and again, this is a form of brainwashing. Now, it might be a relatively innocuous slogan, such as "just do it," which is supposed to encourage you to go and do sport, and you think, well, if I'm programming myself into having a healthier lifestyle, that's not too bad. However, when you get into political slogans, it pretty much systematically is a form of brainwashing. And you will see spiritual cults who will be doing exactly this kind of thing. Now, some of these mantras can be helpful, but you have to observe who is doing it, why are they doing it, and is it just a helpful way to try to be a bit more constructive, or do people start thinking along these lines? In that case, it probably is a sign of brainwashing. So we have these 6 points. Number 1, they lie to you. Number 2, they hijack reciprocity and guilt trip you into doing things for them. Number 3, they hijack shame and guilt, so you feel bad about what happened, but then you sort of double down. Number 4, they isolate you from friends and family to make you more vulnerable. Number 5, they create a fake self through programming, so it's harder to go back to the friends and family and you lose grip over what the world really is like. And number 6, they create a fear of the outside, so you won't go looking for help and you will be afraid to leave. So now that we've identified these 6 points, what can we do about it, if anything? Well, I share some suggestions in the next video that should be popping up on your screen, and I'll share with you some suggestions to avoid falling for these various traps, or making it easier for you to remove yourself from the influence, be it of a cult or of a narcissist.